Here we are in Adobe Photoshop. It should look familiar to you, a lot like Illustrator does. It's set up pretty similarly. And if you have your picture, then you are ready to start this project. If you're opening this project for the first time, then your recents will be blank, but that will populate itself as you work. Let's start by hitting Create New. When you hit Create New, you get this pop-up just like you do in Illustrator. And for this project, we're going to be working on a tabloid size page. So you're going to want to set it to be 11 by 17. 11 by 17. It can either be portrait or landscape. I'm working with a portrait picture, so I'm having mine be 11 by 17, but if you're working in landscape, then you should set it up to be 17 by 11. And something really important I want to point out is the resolution. You want the resolution to be 300. The resolution is right here, and that's going to make it so you can zoom into your picture without it being too pixelated. So once you have this set up, we can name it. So I want you to name it with your first name, last name, underscore cityscape. Right? And then we can hit create. Terrific. So this is what Photoshop should look like for you the first time you open it. And this is really a very crowded space. And before we get into actually making this project, I want to help you clear up this space and set it up so you can really work much more effectively. The first thing I want to do is go through the toolbar with you. The toolbar looks a lot like the one in Illustrator, but it is different because the tools are different. And let's just go through some of them. Let's go through the important ones. So we have over here, where is our marquee tool? It's right here. It starts off as the single column, but let's look at the marquee tool. I think that's how it shows up the first time you open it. I've used the single column more frequently than I used the plain rectangle. So you can drag out a plain rectangle. I'm going to add a new layer. Otherwise, we're going to be making this rectangle. You know what? I'll show you what happens. If I fill in this rectangle, right? So I have this rectangle. These dots are called the marching ants, and they show what is currently being selected. So if I have this rectangle and then I go to Edit, and then I go to Fill, right now this is the color, this pink is what's going to be filling in, that's the foreground color. And right, so I have this pink rectangle, and if I hit this top tool, this is like the arrow tool in Illustrator. This is called the Move tool. You can get it by hitting the letter V. If I try to move this, well, first I need to deselect, so I'd either hit Command or Control. Command if you have a Mac, Control if you have a PC. So Command D to deselect. And I can't move this, see, because it's stuck on the background. So I'm going to hit Cancel. Now I'm going to hit Command Z again. And now what I need to do is make a new layer. And this is this goes to another difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, which is part of the difference between rasters and pixels. Rasters are pixels, rasters and vectors. Vectors exist off the background. The background is just there to make things easier for you. But in pixels, you need to create new layers. Things are not as editable in Photoshop as they are in Illustrator, so you always need to make sure that when you have a new shape, you make a new layer. So I'm going to make a new layer. So now we have layer 1. I'm going to fill in this rectangle with this pink foreground color. The foreground color is the one on top, it's in front. The background color is the one that's in back. And then we hit OK. And now I'm going to deselect this by hitting Command or Control D. And now I'm in the Move tool and I can move this shape. Okay, I'm going to make a new layer. Let's look at some other selection tools. It should start off by showing you the lasso tool. The lasso tool lets you draw a shape. Okay, I'm going to select this yellow, and now I'm going to, instead of hitting Edit, Fill, I want to show you when you start off the program, it starts off with the gradient tool. I'm not sure why it does that because I find the paint bucket to be a lot more useful. But if you hold down on the gradient tool, you should get the paint bucket. You can also get it by hitting the letter G. And then you can fill in that shape. And now I'm going to hit Command or Control D to deselect it. Now if I have the move tool selected, I can move this shape. If I hit this pink shape, then I can move that. Now if I'm on layer 2 and I make another shape and I fill that in, I'm hitting the letter G to get the paint bucket. I'm hitting Command D. Now V to get the move tool. These two shapes are moving together, which is not typically what you want, so let's undo that. Okay. Another important tool to talk about before we move on is the polygon lasso tool, and that's what we're going to be using predominantly for the project. You get it by holding down on the lasso tool, and then you can choose the polygon lasso tool. This works a little bit like the pen tool, except that you can't move the points, right? But then you can make polygons. G to fill it in. Great. I'm going to delete these layers. Great, and I'm going to deselect. Okay, let us look at our windows right here and clean up the space before we even try setting up our document. If you're working on a laptop, which most of you probably are, you don't really have enough space to waste on stuff like this. So the first thing we're doing is I'm going to get rid of libraries by just dragging it out and then hitting this X. There's, you don't need learn. You can X that out. And just look how much more space you get. We can get rid of gradients, and we can get rid of patterns. We won't need color, unfortunately. We won't need adjustments. We can leave properties for now. And we can leave the rest of it. Really all we need is layers and swatches. And we're going to want history. This little thing is history right here. I'm going to click it and then drag it over to swatches because then we get that ½ inch back. And ½ inch is a lot of real estate on a laptop. Okay, now we can hit swatches again. I typically like to have layers on top, but it really doesn't matter. And that's our document right now. The last thing I want to show you before we get to bringing the picture in is our swatches. So this is what your swatches should look like when you open Photoshop the first time. In their more recent versions, instead of having one big swatch panel with all the swatches, they've broken it down into these different topics. So you can find what you're looking for easier. For this project, we're only going to be using grayscale. And these are too many grays. With this many grays, it's going to be difficult to have a high contrast picture, and it will be a lot easier for you to create contrast if you're only allowed to choose between a limited amount of grays. So what I want you to do is delete some grays. We're going to end up with only 11 swatches in our panel, starting with white, which is 0%, and black, which is 100%. And what we're going to do is delete the increments of 5. So what we're doing is first, select the 95, it's the one right next to black. And then I want you to hit Control if you're in a Mac. I'm not totally sure what the shortcut is. You know what? It's actually not doing it. So let's just delete them one by one. So you're going to select this gray, and then you're going to hit the trash. And then you can hit OK. Then you're going to go over this next one, and you're going to hit the trash. And then the next one. So what we're doing is we want to make sure that we only have the increments of 10. Now, if you're worried that you've messed this up, which I'm actually a little worried that I just did, I'm going to show you what you could do. You could go to Append Default Swatches, and that should let you reset them. So now I just got a whole nother set of swatches. I'm going to delete the original ones. It starts with RGB and ends with pale, and I'm just going to trash all of these. Try not to need to do that, but if you can, just know that you're able to. So what we're doing right now is we are deleting the increments of 5. So let's see if we can select more than one at a time. I think it's by hitting Command. There you go. If you hit Command, you can select more than one at a time, and that would be Control if you're in a PC. I think that's how I messed that up. And these are the increments of 5. And once you've, so I'm holding down Command and then selecting the increments of 5, and then I'm going to trash these. Okay, so I just trashed all those grays, and now we have the right amount. We have 11 scales to go from white to black, and these are the only colors we're going to be using for our pictures. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you can set up your document with the picture. But for now, you can save this by hitting Command or Control S and saving it to whatever folder you want to. I'm going to save it to my Cityscapes files.